Women of Reddit, what's something a man has done that made you think, wow, he stands out in a really great way? Reacting calmly to someone else being aggressive. In situations that could have turned into unnecessary confrontation with others, even physical, it's very valuable to trust someone is not gonna be easily provoked and will actually help de-escalate a situation. Someone who is level-headed in the heat of the moment is absolutely extremely rare. I'm ADHD as fuck. The only time I'm truly calm is in a crisis. It's the only time my brain has enough stimulation. My boyfriend was at home, and I was at the university. Probably a 20-minute walk. I called him to say that I would be late to see him because I forgot my umbrella and it was raining pretty hard, so I was going to wait till it died down a bit. Next thing I know, he shows up, umbrella in hand. I felt like I was in a rom-com. In the first few months of my boyfriend and I being together, I mentioned offhandedly that I'd never read the LOTR or Hobbit books, and that I should get a library card so I could go check them out sometime. About a week later he casually hands me a package and it was a beautiful box set of all the books and I cried like a friggin' baby LOL. I very much get the, is this a rom-com what the fuck, feeling. As a dude who's done similar things before, we're ecstatic that it's an easy gift-giving opportunity. We only get those early into the relationship, so we gotta capitalize el mail. My now husband got up at 7:30 every day our last semester to have breakfast in the cafeteria with me. He didn't have class until 10. He doesn't eat breakfast. We weren't even dating yet. Did this in my first relationship when my classes were much later than hers. Took a lot of naps in that time lol. When he tries to help someone everyone else is ignoring. I feel like I got a winner when I see my so give up her seat on the subway to an old lady. It's amazing how few people do that. When my now husband and I had been dating a couple of months, it somehow came up that the house I was renting didn't have any carbon monoxide detectors. He didn't like that, and said he was going to get one and install it for me. I was like, okay, sure, and promptly forgot about it. And then the next week, we lived about an hour and a half apart, and only saw each other on weekends. He showed up with two and installed them before we went to dinner. It wasn't just that he cared about my safety. It was that he said he was going to do something and then did it at the first opportunity. I've had a fair amount of people in my life who promise a lot but never deliver, so the fact that he did, well, that meant a lot. A bit later, we were starting to get more serious, and he had gotten a new job after recently being laid off. He was talking about his future and that he might sell his house and buy a new one in a year or two, and I said, "Oh, what would you be looking for?" He replied, "Well, if we're still together, hopefully we'd be ready to live together. So if you still have the same job, something halfway between our current places so neither of us has a terrible commute. And I figure you won't want all of my wow stuff displayed in the living room like it is now, so I'll need a man cave. And if I have a space that's all mine like that, it's only fair that you do too. So there should be a room you can turn into a craft room or a library or whatever you want." I was blown away. No one had ever shown me such consideration and thoughtfulness like that, factored me into their plans without prompting and actually thinking about what I might want. I told him I loved him for the first time 2 weeks later. And yes, our house has both a man cave for him and a library for me. He noticed what I liked as we started hanging out, and then kept those things on hand at his house. It's like a magic drink snack movie game portal every time I visit. After my main ex and I broke up, I wasn't looking to meet anyone, but as the way things go, I met someone. After a few months of dating, she would often text me complaining she couldn't get any work done cause she didn't have a quiet space to concentrate. So I had a spare key cut so she could use my place while I was at work. I would try often to make sure I had her favorite snacks, drinks, food in stock. But what really impressed her was the day she texted me saying she had to leave shortly after arriving as she had started her period. I told her to look under the bathroom sink. Boom, feminine hygiene products for the win. I was 17, went out with a fake ID, started talking to a considerably older guy. Naturally, I attributed his interest to my maturity, sophistication, and poise beyond my years. When he stepped away from me for a minute, another man, total stranger, approached just long enough to tell me, "You're obviously not old enough to be here. That guy you're talking to is not a good guy. You should go home. I'll call you a cab if you need 1 inch." The creep came back, and as soon as I started showing hesitation about him, He became incredibly pushy, trying to get me to go somewhere alone with him. I insisted on getting a cab, and he tried to get me to tell him my address, to tell the driver. I ducked him and got in the cab. I'll never know exactly what that stranger saved me from that night, but it wasn't going to be good. I don't even remember his face, but I still think about him sometimes. Sometimes we just need to hear it from someone else, or to just hear the words out loud for things to sink in. Changed his opinion on something when given evidence to the contrary to his original beliefs. He's one of the most thoughtful people I've ever met. Genuinely listens to people and actually weighs the things people say to him. Never just dismisses people without deeply considering their words and their perspective. I can't wait to marry him. This was a coworker, not a romantic interest, but ordered me flowers on behalf of the company for an event and had specifically instructed the florist to make sure they were non-toxic to cats so I could take them home. Just him remembering that I had a cat and putting two and two together in that way was way more thoughtful than most dudes trying to date me ever were. Really blew me away. Not only did he retain the information, he connected the dots all on his own. Yeah, he stands out alright. That level of proactive thinking oftentimes feels unicorn levels of rare. Not done to me, but I actually met someone in an emergency room. His dad was sick, and despite the stressful situation and long wait, he stayed so patient and reassuring. He kept comforting his dad with the sweetest smile, making sure he felt at ease. The way he handled everything with such grace and warmth really stood out to me. I grew up in an environment where arguments were loud shouting to get a point across, so it was something I thought was the norm. My first argument with my boyfriend, now husband, was very mature and he never once yelled. He was empathetic and heard me out, and put his points across calmly, without making me feel bad. We ended up having a constructive conversation and resolved it calmly, and got ice cream after. 4 years later, he still never once yelled at me. I also don't yell, but that's because I'm a crier. This is why. We had an argument, but he handled it respectfully and fairly. Is so much bigger than, oh, we never argue at all. It's unrealistic to never, ever butt heads with someone you share a life with. However, the fact that he handled it like a mature adult speaks volumes, and showed you his true colors. You love to see it. A man stands out when he's genuinely kind, listens attentively, remembers small details, and treats everyone with respect. Thoughtful actions leave the biggest impact. Your comment reminds me of a quote which Google tells me is from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. He was hanging around my boyfriend of the time who was bragging about how he was cheating on me. The next night when we were all hanging out in a group, he asked if I'd like to go on a walk with him before I went home for the night because he wanted to talk to me about something. He told me everything my boyfriend said about the girl because, you deserve to know. He bought me a soda and talked to me while I processed it, and never once made me feel like he was preying on that circumstance like people sometimes do. From the first time we met in person and over 4 years later, he looks at me like I'm the most precious thing in the world. No one has ever looked at me with such wonder my entire life, and he takes such good care of me. The only time he's made me cry was last week when he surprised me with a photo album of our cat who's been diagnosed with cancer and only a few months left to live. I love this man so much. I married my husband because he is the only man I have ever met who has ever apologized to me and meant it. Not warped it into, sorry you feel that way, or any bullshit like that. I can work through any problem with him because he is not afraid to admit when he is wrong, and we face the problem together, not bash egos. I was not that way when we met, but he allowed me to learn to be vulnerable and apologize when I am wrong. Basically, a chameleon type who can adapt to situations easily. He has confidence but still pokes fun at himself, and doesn't take himself too seriously. I went on a date with a guy and wasn't feeling it romantically, so I let him know at the end of the date. He took it so well that I genuinely thought he didn't understand, so I explained again I thought he was so great. I did, but wasn't interested in dating. He said he understood completely and was happy to be friends. I was so used to men not being able to take rejection and becoming insanely immature. Well, we've been together 9 years now and married for 4 LOL. He's the best guy ever and I'm happy he was patient with me. Why were you rejecting him? My own personal history of a brief but very shitty relationship that left me not trusting myself, my decision making on picking good people. Said person turned out to be a completely different person than he showed initially, so my immediate response on the date with my husband was friend zone. I loved him but wasn't ready to date. My husband was the first date after the shitty relationship, and even though a year had passed, I was still fucked up from it. Meeting my now husband was a really great eye-opener of what I still needed to work on though, and we talked every day from the day we first met, and I kept making notes of, oh wow, I want that in a boyfriend, until I realized, what am I doing? He's right here. LOL. I'm very grateful for therapy and him. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.